I learned something really shocking about myself this year. I thought that I overate sometimes because I was stressed or feeling down and needed a lift out of my brain fog. And like so many people have brain fog, there are several things that can cause it. You feel spaced out, like you can't properly put your thoughts together, you can't focus. Well, I hate it. And when it was happening, it felt like what I needed was a little lift, a little pick-me-up. And I'd reach for sugary, floury, buttery, crunchy foods, like way too much. And it showed. And what really was a bummer is it didn't work. Didn't work. All my life, I thought I was an emotional eater. I thought I kept lapsing into overeating because I was stressed or bummed out or exhausted. But you know what? When I quit overeating, and particularly those foods, I discovered it's the other way around. And I was stressed and bummed and exhausted because I was overeating. And particularly those comfort foods were the culprit, those sugary foods that spike my insulin and put me in a fog. Now, I'm convinced that this reaction to certain foods is very common with childhood PTSD. And we know this because the rate of obesity and food problems and diabetes and metabolic disorders is so very high with people who had childhood trauma, way higher than the average population. So when the emotional distress and brain dysregulation that are so common for traumatized people would overwhelm me, I didn't know how to make it stop, or I had a wrong assumption. So I have tools to do that, but I was still holding on to food. So when your feelings are on fire, a big blast of sugar, as you may know, it can kind of grab you by the brain and knock you into a kind of fog. And it's kind of like a half oblivion. You can kind of function, it's legal, nobody thinks you're a terrible person, but you're not really all there. You're kind of numbed out. And it's an addictive behavior. And like all addictions, it tends to worsen the very problems that you're trying to solve. Eating that way gives you a brief lift, then torpor, guilt, an urge to pull away from life and people, self-criticism. Maybe you know the cycle. And then one day, for reasons it's hard to understand or predict, you get the power to make a change. Now, changing an addictive relationship to sugary and high carbohydrate foods is well known to be hard, but sometimes the right time comes, and if that time is now for you, here's a way of eating that you might find as helpful as I have. It's helpful for reaching and maintaining a healthy weight, it's helpful for clearing your mind, and it's helpful for relieving dysregulation and the harsh moods that are common for people who were abused and neglected as kids. History of trauma is a factor, and life gets hard sometimes, but this way of eating is like medicine for that. So I learned this way of eating from Susan Pierce Thompson, and she created the program. It's called Bright Line Eating. Now, I probably wouldn't listen to her advice very deeply. There's so many fads about food out there and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat. But I listen to her because she doesn't just lecture from an ivory tower. She's lived the problem that she now teaches people to heal. Susan Pierce Thompson had what I think was a rough childhood. And in her late teens, she became an alcoholic. She was addicted to crack and methamphetamine, and she had a lot of the very harsh life problems like homelessness that can go with that. And then she got sober. Yay. It was a miracle, but what happened next is that her taste for addictive foods like sugar and flour, similar to mine, kind of took over her life, and she gained something like 100 pounds. So she wondered, why are some people indifferent to sugary, floury foods? They see a plate of cookies and they don't even think about it or eat them. And whereas when I see cookies, I feel a strong urge to eat one and then all of them. And I'll be very focused on, are other people eating the cookies? Are they watching? Does it matter if I eat them? Could I get away with it? And she had that. She had it really bad. And she was asking herself, why can't I stop? So she got her PhD in brain and cognitive science. Her life went, from here to here. And her research was entirely on that question. And what she discovered was something very new to this field of study. Some people, and I now know I'm one of them, have a sensitivity to foods that produce a jolt of insulin in the bloodstream. I'm not diabetic, I'm sensitive. And this comes from eating sweets like processed food, bread, crackers, pasta, high carbohydrate foods that go quickly in the bloodstream. That's how you get insulin. You can develop a sensitivity by overdoing it. You can be born with it, or some research in Susan Peirce Thompson's book told me, and this was where I really zeroed in, a history of trauma can turn you into somebody who's sensitive. For sensitive people, what happens is insulin goes up. That's normal when you eat those foods. And in a person who doesn't have sensitivity, there's a hormone called leptin that's released, and it tells their brain, okay, that's enough, you're full, you're satisfied, and they feel it, and they stop eating. And furthermore, they feel the urge to move around. If that leptin response is faulty, that's what Susan Peirce Thompson research is focusing on, and I would say I'm one of those people by her criteria. If that leptin response is faulty, then when you eat those high, quickly absorbed carbohydrate foods, instead of feeling full, you feel more hungry, you feel more craving. Your hunger actually gets heightened, not diminished. So you end up eating more and more. And then a second phenomenon that happens around the release of dopamine in your brain. When you eat those pleasurable foods, dopamine is released, but when leptin's not working and things are out of balance, the receptors can't do their job. And this is called dopamine downregulation. So you have to eat more and more of those foods to even feel okay. And that leaves you with overwhelming cravings for food and everything that I've been talking about in my videos about food this week. So the combination of unregulated insulin and the blockage of your dopamine receptors produce the feeling of fogginess and depression and lethargy, and of course weight gain. And this is one big reason you experience a breakdown in the willpower that you'd otherwise need to avoid this trap, to go, I know that those foods aren't good for me, I just won't eat them. Your willpower breaks down. It only goes so far, and so you give in again and again. I just have lived this. This is the story of my life. So the good news is I found a way to heal from it. And why it works is I didn't have to get my CPTSD all solved before I could try it. I didn't have to somehow get more willpower, which, yeah, it's limited, it's finite. You can exhaust it in 15 minutes, I've learned. And I didn't have to get out of brain fog that I was stuck in to begin. I just had to begin. I had to start eating this way, and I learned it. It's all laid out in the Bright Line Eating webinars. And once I stuck to it for a couple weeks, the benefits were just undeniable, not like anything else that I've ever done. And yes, I lost weight, but much to my surprise, the brain fog cleared away. I could think again, I could focus. I actually have found that my daily practice techniques, you know, if you're familiar with my channel, I talk about them all the time. It's a writing and meditation technique. It's a free course. It's down in the description section under all my videos. Very calming for dysregulation. I've found that doing those techniques alongside while eating the Bright Line Eating plan enhances the effectiveness of both the food plan and the daily practice effects. And we have dozens of people inside my membership program who are using both Bright Line Eating and the daily practice, and they've come to the same conclusion. As always, we would love for you to become a member, and if you struggle with food and weight, you may want to check out Bright Line Eating. I believe in it so much, I asked Susan's team if I could be an affiliate partner, and if you use the links down below to watch those webinars, which are good and free, you don't have to buy anything. If you use those links to access the information about their program, it helps my channel, so I appreciate that. Honestly, I want her to see how many people in my audience are interested in this, because I want her to take notice of how CPTSD is connected to this. I think there is a very powerful collaboration to be had there. It's my observation that Bright Line Eating is one of the few things that supports trauma healing and the health and cognitive problems that are so often attached to CPTSD, and those are just not addressed. I'd like to see that clinically evaluated. I'd like to see it documented. Wouldn't that be great? For now, you'll just have to see for yourself if it works for you. So apologies that this is such an infomercial, but if you know me, you know I almost never recommend anything outside of the Crappy Childhood Fairy, program to my students. This is one thing I have no reservations about suggesting you try. I have one third and last video about food and CPTSD. It's about procrastination and how what you eat can make or break whether you have the power to get things done that are important to you. That video is right here, and I will see you very soon.